Acush legal McCree, won't you buy a box from me? And you'll have the prayers of Dan from Connemara. I'll sell them cheap and low, buy a box before you go, from the broken-hearted farmer Dan O'Hara.
Who was Dan O'Hara? Well, he was 60,000 Irishmen.
In 1847, when the potato crop failed, 1.2 million people died of starvation in this country. Another million was forced to cross the sea to America and Canada. Half them died on the ships going there. Now, this was the home of Dan O'Hara. Dan O'Hara lived here up until 1845 with his wife and 7 children. Now, when Dan O'Hara lived here, this house would be regarded as one of the most elaborate little houses in this immediate area. There was card games played here, visiting took place, there was dances here. So really you're sitting and standing in the 1840 ballroom of romance in this immediate area. Then in 1845, Dan O'Hara increased the size of his windows and he put glass in them. For that, the landlord doubled his rent. This was known at the time throughout those islands as the windows tax. The Irish gave it a different name in the Irish language, the terminology daylight robbery. Now, when Dan O'Hara failed to pay this exorbitant rent, this little house then became the scene of an eviction. A typical eviction that time was the landlord or the agent arrived with the armed police. The armed police put the family outside the door, set fire to the roof and pushed in some of the walls. This was a typical eviction in the west of Ireland during that period. And in fact, between 1845 and 1852, 65,000 families were evicted from their homes in this fashion and forced to cross the sea to America and Canada. When Dan O'Hara was evicted from this cottage, he took the long dangerous voyage to New York. His wife died on the journey and 3 of his children died. When he arrived in America, the 4 remaining children were fostered out to different families in New York. And Dan O'Hara took up the job on the streets of New York selling matches. And that's where you get the song today. The song is telling a factual story. But not only is that song telling the story of Dan O'Hara, it's replicating 65,000 stories. But the landlord came, you know, and he laid my old home low. My poor old wife and I was sadly parted. We were scattered far and wide, and my children starved and died. So it's here I am today, broken-hearted.